Okay, so hi everybody. Those of you who don't know me, my name's JD Swanson. I'm from the National Science Foundation. I've been with EPSCoR, oh my goodness, basically my entire career. So I spent about 15 years in your position in EPSCoR jurisdictions, and 2 of them to be exact, going through the faculty ranks. And I ended up eventually moving to EPSCoR. There we go. I'll move it so the camera's straight ahead. Eventually moving to NSF about 6 years ago, where I was invited in as a rotator, and then I eventually became permanent. So what I'm here today to talk to you all about is the eRISE program, and I believe I'm also here, we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk about the eCore program as well. And so what I've got is I've got a presentation lined up. It's very similar to the webinar, which is also available, so feel free to check that out. It's more or less the same slides. I've just taken a few out that are not relevant because it was aimed at a national audience rather than a state. But one thing that I really want to sort of talk to you and really emphasize to you today is the need, if you really want to be competitive for this opportunity, you really want to start thinking about it now. And you'll hear me say it again in the talk itself, that these projects are really aimed to be statewide efforts, things that your jurisdiction defines as being important to the state, and developing it not just within a single institution, but rather developing it as a statewide network to really help boost the entire jurisdiction in this direction. So as you think about that, the time to put your teams together is now. Right now, Oklahoma is in year 4 of its RI Track 1, so you're actually eligible technically next year. Okay, so you really want to think about that as you move forward, and it takes times to bring really good teams of individuals together. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my screen. I'm going to go through the presentation. At the end, please feel free to ask any questions of me. And also don't be afraid to email me. There's a couple of emails at the end that you can reach out to me via as well. Okay, so I'll start my screen share. Looking. There we go. And desktop. Okay. So with that, what I want to do is, so again, my name is JD. The solicitation number that we're talking about specifically today is NSF 23588. And it's called EPSCoR Research Incubators for STEM Excellence RII. And there's a couple of words that I really want to highlight. Well, 3 words that I really want to highlight. Research. This is all about research capacity, right? We've left research infrastructure improvement in these titles. So it's not about just completing some work. It's about the idea of building research infrastructure, helping Oklahoma move from point A to point B and build that critical mass to be awesome in an area of science, in a topical area. The second word is incubator. These are not perpetual funding machines. What these are designed for is for you to basically provide initial funding, provide a roadmap, and get you to a particular position where you accomplish whatever you wanted to accomplish to get to the next step. And the last place is excellence. We are only funding awesome ideas, awesome projects in this. And so it's really about getting the idea together and accomplishing that as a jurisdiction. And so we really created these 2 new opportunities to really replace the long-standing RI Track 1 program for a number of reasons. The first was really to provide a lot more opportunity for each jurisdiction to be aware of and develop your own unique strengths and respond to your own challenges. Secondly, we hope that these will develop collaborations across the jurisdiction to build research capacity and really build it as a corpus of work, very much along the same lines of what we've seen our RI Track 2 projects do, and the Track 1s as well, of course, but really opening it up. The second thing is really positioning the jurisdiction to be competitive for wider NSF funding beyond EPSCoR. So when you think of EPSCoR funding, we're a massive 2.7% of the NSF budget right now. Right, that's our particular ratio. That's where all these funds come from to fund Track 1, Track 2s, Track 4s, and our co-funding. But at the end of the day, there's another 97% of NSF funding that you can tap into. And that's what we're hoping to do, is position you in a place where you are super competitive, super ahead of the game to be able to compete for that funding. The other one is to really allow you, the jurisdiction itself, the ability to respond and develop dynamically in a real sort of needs matrix type strategy. And I'll explain that a little bit more later. And you know, at the end of the day, your goals are our goals. Our goals is to see Oklahoma move forward. So the two opportunities, they work in lockstep with one another, but they do not need to be related to each other. So that's the first point. But the first one is EPSCoR, which is 23587. Again, I'll talk about that at another time. But the one we're talking about today is, of course, this 23588. Okay, these EPSCoR, these research incubators for STEM excellence. So eRISE, which is our sort of name for it, the idea of it is it's to support the incubation of research teams and products in a scientific topical area that links to research priorities identified by the jurisdiction. So let me sort of expand that out sort of in sort of an interesting way. So what we sort of have really envisioned here at NSF is the idea of looking at your entire, the entirety of Oklahoma's research system as an ecosystem, right? And really looking at those different components and how they connect to one another. And so what you can imagine is things that we have here, and hopefully you can see my cursor. Yep, is that you'll have R1 institute, all of the academic institutions, including the R1s, the emerging research institutions that include the PUIs, magic mice, community colleges, minority serving institutions, and so forth. You have your other jurisdictional local sectors that includes the governments and both local and state government agencies. And you also have partnerships with industry, tribal partnerships, public and private, etc. Another thing that's important that you have is your community stakeholders, right, in the public, the folks by which you serve. To that, what we add is we also have our NSF investments that we currently make. So that would be the track ones, which will, again, your one will be disappearing in about 2 years. We have our other RI investments, including track 2 and track 4 that are not going anywhere. We have our other center-like activities, the RIs, the regional innovation engines, ERCs, STCs, all of our single investigator grants, right, that happen throughout NSF. All of those are connected in. And you have all sorts of other, you know, research or translational activities that are going on in the state. And I want to point that out sort of in conjunction with the idea of other federal infrastructure, including NASA, NIH, USDA, and so forth, that are obviously connecting and investing in your jurisdiction. We also have the jurisdictional EPSCoR steering committee. And so what they do is that we'll talk about them a little bit more, but they play a really key sort of role in really helping sort of keep that eye on the jurisdiction and really feeling the pulse of where it's at, how this ecosystem's evolving over time, and providing reach into places that you may not have that reach. And connecting all of that is our EPSCoRs. So these guys here sitting right in the center provide that role to be able to connect everybody together. So this is sort of the ecosystem that we imagine, that all of these places are moving and changing and shifting over time. So the thing that's really important is when you look at the two sort of solicitations that we produced, our EPSCoR looks at fundamental topic in specific sort of research capacity components, things like networks of humans, administrative components like sponsored programs offices and across different, so as you may or may not realize, across different institutions, SPOs may not be all created equally, and resources that are available to you as researchers. STEM education is something that's critical to build a healthy ecosystem, workforce development, broadening participation, partnerships, economic development, and so forth. All of these things are really important fundamental pieces, regardless of topic or scientific topic, to keep an ecosystem healthy and moving as we move forward. eRISE is aimed at the topic. So it's aimed at the particular area. Say, for example, Oklahoma decides we want to be the most awesome bunch of folks nationally and internationally in understanding the effects of elephant droppings in Afghanistan. And that is absolutely critically important to Oklahoma. That would be that could be potentially a topic that you may choose to work on. Again, I'm being facetious here, but what you want to think about is that research topic that's specific needs to be connected to something that the state sees as a need or as a strength or as an opportunity. So again, just sort of linking that in, you can sort of see sort of an expanded version of this where I've sort of linked in just with arrows, how the EPSCoR is envisioned to link all of this together. So what they can do is they can link things like other federal infrastructure to these other places. They can link minority serving institutions across to any of these other partners or linkages and so forth. So where does eRise fit? It fits right here. It's simply another mechanism by which we're able to invest to help the jurisdiction provide another place, another centralized place to be able to connect in an area that's interest and give it that boost to help make it nationally and internationally competitive and link it into the larger ecosystem and have a large effect on this ecosystem. So what we aim for them to do, and this is directly from the solicitation, is to build a jurisdiction-wide network of teams and researchers that incubate high-quality research in a defined STEM disciplinary area or topic choice that's aligned with jurisdictional priority areas and EPSCoR's mission and goals. So what we hope that you're going to do is develop high-quality, hypothesis-driven research that's aimed towards a particular outcome. And what we need you to do is we need you to also think about two extra pieces. One of them is STEM education and workforce development. How will the science that you do, the research that you do, how will that connect to an end use, to something that is important in the jurisdiction? It can be great to do research for research's sake. That's important. But how is that going to lead to the longevity of that research and the outcomes of that research within the jurisdiction of Oklahoma over time? And to do that, you've really got to think about what the workforce is actually going to look like, right? And what that would actually be. So it may be partially producing PhD students, but it also might be, well, what's the industries that may be able to come out of it and be seated and placed in Oklahoma that may come out of this research? What would that workforce look like? And so what we do is we require you to look at two different pieces. One of them is the education, the workforce development, but also at the same time, really thinking about what that end use actually looks like. So what are the structures? First thing, more than one proposal per jurisdiction is allowed. We're happy to accept those. And also more than one eRise per jurisdiction is allowed. We are, yes, that's right, folks. We are happy to fund multiple eRises in any one particular jurisdiction. It'll depend solely and completely on the quality of the proposals that you submit. These are expected to be funded at the range of $1.75 million per year for 4 years. And there's the opportunity to renew these at the rate of $1.5 million per year for an additional 3 years, depending on progress and the actuation of a direct pathway to sustainability. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I don't want to let too much out of the bag yet. The potential total of the awards are $11.5 million per eRise award. These will be done as continuing grants, and they'll have a reverse site visit in years 3 to 4, which coincides ironically with the renewal process. And we'll talk about those steps sort of as we go. So the thing, and I want to re-emphasize this again and again and again, right? I'm repeating myself and I know it and I'm aware of it, but I really want to make sure it's clear. These eRise incubators are intended to result in sustainable infrastructure in a jurisdiction that positions you to be leaders in a STEM topical area at a national or international level. And I know that's big sites, but we know you can do it, right? We've seen it in so many ways in other aspects of EPSCoR that we're really excited about this opportunity. The key features of every single eRise that we fund will have the following 6 elements. Number one, they build a jurisdiction-wide network. So it's a network of individuals, institutions, and organizations to develop this high-quality research and really focused on a jurisdictional scientific priority area. And also that, of course, will be aligned, because we all want the same thing, with the EPSCoR mission and goals. We want to see the incorporation of diversity, equity, access, and culture of inclusion, ensuring that every single individual that wants to partake in this area of science comes together. And we want to see that done in really clear ways. So it doesn't matter where you're from in the jurisdiction, that those who want to participate have the means and ability to participate in that area of science, right? In that area, in that STEM topic area. It's about developing that skilled workforce, as I sort of described before, that's relevant to the project and its outcomes. So this will be tightly linked. If you're working on things that are, say, advanced manufacturing, what will that workforce look like? What's actually needed, not just for the research and to expand our knowledge, but what's needed for the outcomes of the research itself? And in line with that, what's the incorporation of the use-inspired perspectives and societal impact? And so really, excuse me. So as you think about that, we're really asking you to think about not just the incorporation of use-inspired. This shouldn't be new. We're asking you to really basically time-bound your broader impacts. Give us an idea of what an industry or what public good will come out of doing this research, and time-bound that, and have a workforce that connects to that, right? And ensure that you're working towards that. Number 5, really thinking about how it's going to be sustained. So if you're thinking about it by year 4, you're probably not going to get the renewal, right? You want to be thinking about it from day 1. And that's something that we're going to be looking through in the merit review process from the outset. And the last piece is we know that science changes, right? And we know that things develop. And so constantly looking inward to understand how you move and how you work forward is really important. Now, I'm a picture thinker, so let's think about it in a picture thinker kind of way. So when I imagine these ERIs, I imagine them as a triangle. And that to the top of that triangle, because we are the National Science Foundation, right, is really thinking about it from a question or hypothesis standpoint. That topic, clear, obvious, hypothesis-driven research is at our core. And so having that tied at the top is key. The other two sort of elements of the triangle is, of course, our workforce development relevant to the topic, and also our societal impact. Seated inside that triangle is that idea of continual evaluation and continual improvement, right? Constantly looking inward to look at the research. Are we doing the best research available, or are we just sort of doing what we've always done? Is the workforce development work, is it effective? How do you know it's effective? Are we shifting the needle in terms of societal impact? How do we know that? And so constantly looking inwards and evaluating is absolutely key to know success. That, of course, will be seated in a culture of inclusion. Remember, these are statewide projects. If you count through, I think jurisdiction has mentioned something like, my goodness, 190 some times in the solicitation. If you look at the word institution, that's named, I think, 70 in the ERI's solicitation. So it's about ensuring that you're casting this not just single lab sort of story or a couple of labs across the state, but you're truly reaching out so that you get the benefit of every single mind that's able to contribute to this topic to really move the entire jurisdiction forward. And what we're hoping is out of all of that is that you're aimed like an arrow towards sustainability. What comes next? So at the end of those 7 years, you're poised and ready to take advantage of whatever other opportunities are available to maintain the momentum that you build over the first 4 years, getting the team together, and refocusing and firing of those last 3 years. The research field is open, and I really want to emphasize that. The thing, you've got to tie it back to the state S&T plan, but in reality, it's really up to you to really talk with those folks that are going to be creating the S&T plans and working on those S&T plans. Now is your time to get engaged with them, right? And I'll talk more about that process and how we envision it at NSF actually in a second. So how do you select the topic? The first thing is that when we see the topics and when these are merit reviewed, and I'll talk about the extra merit review criteria towards the end, is that these need to be based on demonstrable research capacity, needs, or strengths in the jurisdiction. The proposal should provide a clear and justifiable data-driven rationale for the topic with a clear pathway of where you envision it to go. So it can't be just, I like science, right? It's got to be, where does the science go? What does it mean? Why is it meaningful for you in the context of your jurisdiction, right? And so it's got to be based on evidence-based analysis, be justifiable in terms of data, and that it's a fit within your jurisdiction to make it move forward, right? Because if we invest in something and it's not sustainable within the jurisdiction, then it's a poor investment on NSF's part, right? If we don't have the backing of the state. So the role of the EPSCoR steering committee, the first thing that I want to state outright and publicly is that the role is redefined. Originally, if you've ever worked with EPSCoR in the past, especially track ones, you know that the jurisdictional steering committee was always the one that selected the topic. That's really not quite the case anymore, right? It's the role is really redefined, where they play a co-development role with you to really understand what the needs of the jurisdiction are. And because we now allow multiple e-rises per that, there is no need for them to play that sort of role of having to make a very difficult decision. Now they're in a role where they can help you be successful. Right. And so what you find is that the actual makeups, we suspect, may be changing within jurisdictions. The membership should be unique to the jurisdiction, defined by what the makeup of the jurisdiction is. Their key role is really in connecting entities beyond traditional NSF EPSCoR reach and engage them in that full research enterprise of the jurisdiction, that full 35,000-mile view. They really need a wide and diverse membership, right? Membership in terms of sectors, diversity of institution types, diversity of perspectives and individuals. And what they're charged with, they actually have a really important job now, is to work with the EPSCoRs and others, and I'll define who those others are in a minute because that's important, to understand the dynamic ecosystem of research in the jurisdiction, including all federal investments, including all of the things that that NIH invests, that USDA invests, because all of those alter the dynamics of the research capacity of the total system, right? They provide connections to networks to help develop additional networks where appropriate. We expect them to work with the EPSCoRs and others to continually assess and identify jurisdictional strengths, challenges, barriers, and help provide that demonstrable evidence that I spoke of before. And we also expect them to work with the EPSCoRs and others to develop this science and technology plans. It's of note that they are receiving some funding now to help them do this. So who are the others? Well, it's you, right? It's the eRise project teams, right? To say, you know, you need to, if your science is important to you, say why, and say why it's important to Oklahoma, right? And make that case and make sure it's part of your state S&T plan. Show why it's an opportunity, right? The RI Track 2 teams that we've funded for years, right? Those are some of the best teams in the country, right? How do they relate to the jurisdiction? All of the other investment teams, the regional innovation engines, the STCs, ERCs, includes biofoundries, single investigator projects, you all have a role to play in this, as do the other state and federal and state investments, as you're determining what the ecosystem of Oklahoma looks like, right? So we see it looking like this, that it's not sort of the jurisdictional EPSCoR committee playing a hierarchical manner, but rather playing a co-productive role in conjunction with the EPSCoR RIIs. And other folks connect to those EPSCoR RIIs. Right now, they take the role as your state officers as these things are rolling off, right? But to connect together to understand what that input is to start producing those state S&T plans. So what does the S&T plan look like? Well, what happens is both the jurisdictional steering committee and the EPSCoRs co-produce, using all of the input that they receive, this jurisdictional science and technology plan that's a living document. We don't imagine this thing to be this stoic 5-year thing that we produce every 5 years because we have to, because we've got to make a new track 1. That's not it anymore. That ain't going to cut it, right? What these jurisdictional science and technology plans are these living documents. So what they do is they show the strengths, the needs, the challenges in the jurisdiction-wide ecosystem, right? Because as a new E-Rise rises, get it, I'm a funny guy, right? As that comes in, what you'll find is that the dynamics of the ecosystem will change. Maybe you get a regional innovation engine. Maybe you get a new Embry grant or COBRE, right? Maybe you get a new ICOR, right? Those kinds of things, as they come in, they change the dynamics of the ecosystem, and therefore your jurisdictional science and technology should change accordingly, right? As those needs and challenges change. The other thing that it does is it identifies priorities, and it identifies fundamental research infrastructure priorities. Oh my goodness, we really need to boost diversity. Oh my goodness, we need to help build our economic infrastructure and provide pathways for economic development. Oh my goodness, we need to help some of the smaller colleges develop SROs so they can fully engage in our ecosystem. Those things are addressed by EPSCoR. The other one is we may identify that studying, what was it, elephant droppings in Afghanistan, I think was the topic. That's really important. That's an opportunity. That could be something that be addressed by an E-Rise, right? You get the idea. And what happens is as they go, as the E-Rise runs, right, there was an identified opportunity that will get monitored through the award to show the progress in that particular area as it becomes a strength in Oklahoma. And that becomes part of the living document of the jurisdictional science and technology plan. So what you can imagine is over time, let's say 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, what you have is as you look back through these iterations of these science and technology plans, you see the continued evolution of research competitiveness in your state, listed down and documented for perpetuity. Really cool, right? The renewal of an E-Rise is going to be based on several things. Number one, evidence of research excellence, right? You've got to show that you're just doing awesome in the research, and that's at the top. Second thing is that you've got to show that your other elements, that's the stated workforce development goals and use-inspired work, is being successful. The second thing that's going to be really key is the articulation of a clear pathway towards sustainability and evidence of accumulation of some resources or commitment thereof to achieve those goals. So let me just bring that out of NSF code for you a little bit. So number one, we want to see you build this trajectory over those first 4 years. What we notice in our track ones is that really good in the 4 years of bringing the gang together. What we want to see is those first 4 years are about bringing the gang together and really moving the ship towards what that sustainability plan is. And we want to see evidence of that. The second part of that sentence, evidence of accumulation of some resources, is really about the idea of a cost share. And so what we're doing, and this is coming out in it's been approved currently by the director. We had to do some work, but there will be a cost share requirement for these projects, not to get involved, not for the first 4 years, but to be able to get the second 3 years, you'll be required to have some cost share to move forward for the second half. We're still working on the details of that, and they will be in a new solicitation that will be coming out shortly. The 3 years, and just cutting to the base of it, those 3 years, those additional 3 years of renewal are aimed specifically to accomplish that sustainability. And the way we're going to be assessing that is via a reverse site visit or a site visit. Again, the details are going to be coming up in a solicitation, and so you'll know what that looks like well ahead of time. For now, just know that there will be cost share required for that renewal, and two, just work on the best proposal you can, work on the best ideas to bring those teams together. So what does sustainability look like? Well, we really leave it up to you, because it's not for us to define what sustainability should be for you, right? It could be a regional innovation engine. It could be an STC. It could be a regional, it could be an ERC, an STC. It could be a company. It could be multiple companies. It could be whatever you define it, okay, as long as it's real, right? We want you to have a target and shoot for it. And that target, whatever it is, has to have jurisdictional impact. So we understand that sustainability looks different for different projects. And it needs to be beyond EPSCoR, right? If your sustainability plan is aiming for another RIE, ain't going to happen. If your sustainability plan is to aim for a track 2, ain't going to happen. It needs to be beyond NSF EPSCoR. It can be NSF, it could be USDA, it might be something completely different, a new initiation that's led by the governor of Oklahoma, right? It's however you define that. You need to seed it in database-based evidence, right, that you are making steps towards it, and demonstrate what you have support to achieve. And whatever goal, it just needs to be smart, right? So, and just look up SMART goals, right? So the idea of being, time-bound, being actionable, and so forth. And so that idea of being really reflective and being on sort of this total process management while you're in real time through the project is going to be critical. Couple of important points, right? And I just want to get this out the way because I can imagine all sorts of rumors starting. We will accept and consider for funding any number of proposals in a given jurisdiction based on merit review criteria, right? So what I'm saying here is that we are looking at we're hoping to fund every excellent award that we can find. And we will actually be hitting up, thanks to the CHIPS and Science Act, we will be hitting up other directorates and divisions within NSF to help co-fund our projects for a change. So this is how we hope to be able to fund many, many of these into the future. And we're really excited about that. So let's go into a couple of the nitty-gritty. To be eligible to compete for an E-Rise, you need to be in an EPSCoR jurisdiction, and that also includes any partners that you bring in. So if you bring in any collaborators, they have to be in EPSCoR jurisdictions. If they're not, they can be included as an unfunded collaborator. To be from you must be from an institution or organization that's either in the 5th or final year of an RI Track 1. Right now, Oklahoma just started its 4th year, so they're going into their 5th year this time next year. So make sure that you're aware of that timing, right? You were not able to apply until then. You're saying, well, why are we having the seminar a year out? To build an effective team, you need to be doing it now. Trust me. Okay. You need to have an active jurisdictional steering committee with current bylaws to support STEM research. You need to have a jurisdictional science and technology plan that's been officially accepted and approved by the jurisdiction. You need to have either be applying for or have just one active EPSCoR in the jurisdiction, or an EPSCoR Track 1 in its 5th or final year. We're just starting out, so we know there's going to be sort of some fluff around that one. But ideally, you know that from all of the sort of examples I've given, EPSCoR is really the central hub to this. So you can see why its presence is absolutely critical. For now, Track 1s obviously play that role. But you need to know that there needs to be one in. So again, we don't expect any issues there. The thing that's important is that you can if you're involved in any way, if your institution is involved in any way in a current RI Track 1, you cannot actually compete. There is a loophole, however. If you're in an institution that is not currently involved in Oklahoma's RII Track 1, you are actually eligible to compete, right? Like right now, you could put a proposal in for the January deadline, right? So just as a heads up, but just note that no one who is currently involved in an institution, no individual who is at an institution that has a current Track 1 is eligible. And it came down to just, we simply had to stepwise this in, right? Because it's a large investment on our part. So just know that if you're in an institution that is not involved, you technically can group with those other institutions that are not involved and put in an E-Rise or an EPSCoR. If you meet the previous criteria, so year 5 and 5 or final year, there's some other pieces that are important. The first one is jurisdictional. There's no limit on the number of submissions per jurisdiction. So you can get together and submit them. Bang, 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 bang. Send them in. More better. We're excited. Institution organization. Your organization, so your university, may lead on a single E-Rise. So you can only lead on a single E-Rise. However, you can collaborate in a non-lead role or subaward on any number of E-Rise or E-Cores. So what that means is, say that University of Oklahoma, you can only lead on a single E-Rise project. However, you can be subawards or you can be collaborators on collaborative proposals on any number of E-Rise proposals. Clear? Right, PI-wise, you need to be affiliated and employed by an eligible organization in EPSCoR jurisdiction. Believe it or not, people hire people in from other jurisdictions for this. Don't ask me why. Each collaborating institution organization must be represented by a PI or at least one co-PI. The thing that's important here is we follow track 2 rules here. So a PI or co-PI, you can only be co-PI or PI on a single E-Rise proposal. However, you may serve as senior personnel on any number. Okay, so that's important. You can be PI or co-PI on a single active or pending E-Rise proposal, and you may serve as senior personnel on any number. You cannot be PI or co-PI on more than one at any one time. Collaboration, these are all about collaboration, right? They're all multi-institution and multi-organizational, right? And you've really got to think wide. You know, we're open to partnerships and collaboration of all shapes and sizes, academic, non-academic, name it, right? And these are really about building these jurisdiction-wide networks. It's encouraged that the lead institution or at least one collaborative partner be an emerging research institution, minority serving institution, or primarily undergraduate institution, and so forth, or MSI. Just make sure that you're involving folks, right? That's the idea here. And also really we need significant justification. We do allow justification with non-EPSCoR jurisdictions or other jurisdictions or international entities, but they can be they need significant justification as to why you need that to come into Oklahoma to help you. It's really, you need to phrase it of why it's of benefit to Oklahoma, not to you, but to the state. And just as a note, any non-EPSCoR jurisdictions must be an unfunded collaborator. That's the golden rule of EPSCoR. That's a rule by which we actually receive our funding from Congress. So questions is a little bit of myth busting just for you. I have a great lab at my own university that I want to build. Will I be competitive? No. All E-Rise projects are set to build jurisdiction-wide research teams in scientific topics and should be seated within the context of jurisdictional research strengths or building needs, right? i.e. through the state S&T plan. Second myth, only R1s or the big universities can lead. No, we encourage submissions led from all kinds of institutions and organizations. One of the ways that we've really thought about this and to make this accessible to smaller institutions is provide a collaborative mechanism. So historically, we always use a prime with subawards. That can be difficult for smaller institutions to handle. So therefore, we also allow proposals to come in via the collaborative mechanism that allows you to look after just your part of the award. Meanwhile, the other collaborators, which are not leads, by the way, they're collaborators, to be able to use those and work with that. I have a ton of different institutions. I want to include all of them, but there's not enough space on the cover sheet. Go for the collaborative option, right? That's the easiest way. Can I be a co-PI on both an E-Rise and an E-Core? Yes. So you can be a PI or co-PI on both an E-Rise and E-Core, but note that you cannot be a co-PI or co-PI on multiple E-Rises or multiple E-Cores. Excuse me. My jurisdiction is submitting several E-Rise proposals. Will I even be considered? Absolutely. you have my word. Every single proposal we will receive will be put through the same merit review process, and it will come out based on its strengths. It will come out based on its strengths and weaknesses and will be awarded as such. Some places that I really want to point out just for the last part of my presentation is the merit review criteria. So as well as our standard intellectual merit and broader impacts, we've also have another 5 solicitation specific criteria that will be reviewed and talked about by every single reviewer on your proposals. The first is the connection and potential impact of this area of science, this project, to the jurisdictional research capacity building and EPSCoR goals, right? The idea of what is the connection of this to the state. The second, the development of a skilled workforce that's relevant to the project and its outcomes, right? Not just are you producing more PhD students, but rather are you helping develop a workforce that is going to be powerful. The support of diversity and a culture of inclusion of different institution types and sectors, academia, industry, and government. How are you showing that full culture of inclusion, that you're including the full capacity of the state in this particular topic area? How are you driving everybody towards that common goal? We want to see the plan towards sustainability and society, and thus eventual societal impact, right? And what that looks like. And finally, what does the leadership and partnerships look like? Because this is about humans, right? And the way that they work together. And so thinking about those 5 criteria, as well as broader impacts and intellectual merit, is going to be critical for success of any proposal that comes forward. The time frame for these, NSF 23588, the full proposal is due, the first set is January 16th, 2024, or August 13th, 2024. I don't think year 4, I don't think you'll be eligible by August. So it'll be due the second Tuesday in August thereafter. I'll have to check when I'm not sure when your award date ends. So that's something to check, right? Very quickly. But if there's any institutions in Oklahoma that are currently not involved, you're actually eligible right now. You can actually apply. From NSF, there's frequently asked questions that are coming out. I wrote them literally a month ago. So they're just making their way through sort of the levels of NSF. They should be published any day now, I'm hoping. I am always open to meet with jurisdictions just like I am now. There are workshops coming on governance. There'll be a lot of focus of this around in the May meeting, which I'm super excited about. And if you've got questions, just feel free to email me. For eRise questions in particular, just EPSCoR-rise@nsf.gov, and they come straight to me. And what do you need to do? Spread the word, right? You know, if you've got an idea, start talking to folks about it, right? Because it's those non-obvious connections that are really going to make the biggest difference. Make your connections across your jurisdiction. Revisit your jurisdiction EPSCoR steering committees. Now is the time, because they're trying to figure out how to operate in this new ecosystem. Revisit your state S&T plans and just reach out. And with that, I'll sort of stop here. I'll unshare my screen, and then we can chat as you need. And I have as much time as needed. And I'm happy to take questions. And I can take a breath now. Or have I stopped everyone dead? Yeah, I can certainly email these slides on, and also there's excuse me, I have full-blown COVID right now, so that's why my brain's a little scattered today, just a heads up. We can get these slides. There's also webinars that are already available on the EPSCoR website, so feel free to go through those. They also have this presentation. I saw this presentation was recorded, but I am also happy to share these slides as needed. So I'll send those on to onto Kaylee, no problem. Are you excited, or are you all in shock? I'm not sure. It's always a lot of jargon. Well, welcome to NSF. Just think of, I'm a molecular biologist, right? Remember what that was like. Yeah, so something that I think is really important to think about, and for me, I grew up in EPSCoR. So, and it's really this is something that's warming the cockles of my heart, and I'm going to be going back to my boss, to Sandra, and telling her, just the number of you that are saying that are new to it, that absolutely warms the cockles of my heart, and it's absolutely the intent of these programs. And so I'm really happy to see that. And so one of the things that I've been involved with EPSCoR my entire career, so as a faculty member, I helped write track ones. Coming to NSF, I got to see sort of the dark side of the force. And so when you think about these particular projects, these do not have to be like NIH type, we know what the answer is, but we're going to write the grant for the grant we want to get next. Do you know what I mean? These ones are truly outline what your strengths are and where you want to build capacity, and show us that trajectory, right? Because we know you're not there yet. That's the point, right? As these are research infrastructure improvement grants. They're designed to help you get the tools that you need. Think of them as $11 million startups. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's really, really, really important. I love this question, Olivia. Can you promote sustainability outside of future funding, but also for the development of a new workforce? Absolutely, right? That's exactly what we're after, right? And so, yeah, and that's the way we want to think about it, right? Is what does sustainability in the area that you're thinking of, what does that look like? Where do you want to be? Because these grants are designed to help you get there. Do you know what I mean? And then once you're there, then you can bloom to whatever your definition of sustainability is, and I think that's really important. Yay to see Mississippi, rock and roll. I was there just a couple of weeks ago. I saw Katie. Yep, there she is. No, so this is the interesting one. So this was a question that came in. Are there any STEM/sustainability/diversity area specific foci that NSF is looking for? Are there any examples? And the answer is no, not really. We're going this honestly with a blank slate. I think that the onus and the burden is really on you to define what it looks like for you, because one of the things that one of the issues I think that was with track one was it really tarred every single jurisdiction the same, right? It treated all of you the same, and there was a lot of concern. So I was in where I caught COVID from. I was in Guam last week, right? And their definition of sustainability and diversity is very, very different to what yours looks like. And so these programs are designed in such a way that they're scalable and definable, right? Definable to what your needs are. And so define them, right? NSF, just all we want excellent science that moves the nation forward, right? So if you want to know what EPSCoR wants, just look at what the EPSCoR goals are on the website, right? And that defines it. What's the stance on business industrial inclusion? How much should business be involved? It's up to you, and it's topic dependent, right? If somebody's looking at an ecological type project, then it might be really important to think about local government and stakeholder inclusion, right? If you're looking at one that's about producing a widget, right, some sort of new material, then industry would be a critical piece of sustainability, wouldn't it? So you've got to, so it just depends, right? It depends how you define it. And it depends what your sustainability looks like. Awesome questions. These are great. Yeah. And so, the thing is think about trajectory, plan out where you want to be. So don't make the end point, this is the project I want to make. Don't make the end point the getting the grant. make the endpoint 20 years from the end of the grant. Do you know what I mean? Really try and think about where you want to be and how this grant will get you partially to there. Let me have a look. Yeah, addressing inherent statewide problems, we'll call them challenges. That's a lot more fluffier. With inherent statewide resources, people for the long haul, absolutely. That's absolutely where we're going. That's absolutely where we're thinking. And because it takes, to move the culture of a jurisdiction, it takes that, and we're happy to make the investment to help move those needles, to help start shifting that. But it's got to happen. It can't happen from individual labs. It's got to happen from individuals in the state connecting together to make this a piece moving forward. One more, I know the goal is to create a culture of inclusion, but do you see the collaborations grow too big? It varies, right? And it depends on how the topic's connected and what kind of topic. Like if you decide to make something on the environment, yeah, it's going to absolutely grow too big. But depending on how you define down your problems and choosing the best people across the state and creating opportunities for those individuals to connect, no, they'll be fine. And you can also, if you end up getting industry involved, you can easily connect in other players and so forth, or apply for state funding or other elements of funding to connect individuals together in your network, right? And also EPSCoR can help support, bring some outsiders across into your project once you've established those networks. So there's areas for other ways to connect individuals into your network, right, as you're moving, but it's being open to that that's really critical. And that's what a culture of inclusion is. It's not about having everybody from the beginning, but providing a place for people to go as it develops. Does a jurisdiction have to have an EPSCoR in place before? If an EPSCoR is about capacity building, how does it connect to the objectives of the granted program? Good question. I love that one. Nice one, Joyce. That one's a good one. Okay, so number one, you have to have an EPSCoR. You have to be, because we're starting both these things simultaneously, what's going to happen is there will be cases where potentially states simply are not successful in obtaining an EPSCoR in the first round and getting an E-Rise and vice versa, right? Or they may get both, or they may get none. Depends on the quality of the proposals and the result of merit review, right? And so what you can find is that we are open to it, but what you'll find is after 2 to 3 cycles, most likely everybody will have an EPSCoR and an E-Rise. So we see that sort of not being an issue. We know it's a teething problem at the beginning, but we know that that will sort itself out. In terms of the the granted program, granted at the moment is really in its early stages. It wouldn't surprise me if something, and this is JD speaking, not NSF speaking, is that something like EPSCoR actually eventually becomes sort of a staple of granted. And remember that granted is currently really seeking it's currently seeking just ideas from the community. And I don't know to the extent yet how much those ideas that are coming in are moving beyond a very localized basis to a national sort of effort. So I'm not that well connected with granted. I'm on the sort of fringes of it, but I haven't seen that yet. EPSCoR I see, and just like the EPIC program coming out of TIP, I see those as capacity building programs that will work in concert with granted and could enhance it, could involve it, could provide structure to it. I can see elements of granted actually connecting to EPSCoRs directly and becoming EPSCoRs, and so forth, depending on how you swing it or vice versa. So it sort of goes. And yes, go Salve. I was a professor at Salve. I do miss it. I miss the ocean. You don't get it in Virginia. Yeah, so I don't see the roles changing that much, to be honest. And it depends on how this is the chance, like for the state offices at the moment, I think this is an opportunity for leadership, right? At the moment, you are the most plugged in folks, period, in your jurisdiction. And so, you know, I think we're developing workshops right now to help you address exactly these problems, because they're not for us to really to answer them, to be honest. But I do see really important places. And if you see, I can't obviously, or the place where I see them is really in facilitating that. If we saw the EPSCoR and then you see the state steering committees, there's that co-production piece. I see a critical and important role for the state officers moving far beyond just NSF, but actually looking at total state ecosystem structure and actually providing being the facilitators for that co-development. To be honest, that's where I see their place, but that's just one opinion, right? And I think hopefully we're going to be having some workshops soon that'll be helping you all develop and work through that to understand exactly where the critical important role that you play sort of falls in. But I see a really important role for you all. Oh my goodness, right on the hour. Well, thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, please never hesitate to reach out. If you want to come back, come hang out for to talk about EPSCoR, and it'll be wonderful to chat. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, JD. These slides, I'll post this presentation on the EPSCoR website. You can find it at okepscor.org. I'll post the slides, the presentation, and there's contact info as well. So thank you everyone for joining.